In progress.
All right, I'd like to call to order the February 28th, 2023 Mountlake Terrace Planning Commission meeting to order. Please take the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Bautista.
Here.
Vice Chair Sandoval.
Here.
Commissioner Betcher.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan.
Here.
And Commissioner Harrison asked to be excused tonight.
All right, would anybody like to make a motion to excuse Commissioner Harrison tonight?
Motion to excuse Commissioner Harrison.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Commissioner Harrison has an excused absence for tonight. And then next item on the agenda, the approval of the February 13th meeting minutes. Does anybody have any changes or corrections to those minutes? Not hearing or seeing any, so we'll go ahead and declare those meeting minutes accepted as presented. Item number 4, public comment. Let the record show there is no public in person here tonight to make comment. Is there anybody attending online who'd wish to speak to anything that's not on the agenda tonight?
No public comment has been received by 4 p.m. today, and no one has registered for in-person attendance for tonight.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 5 then. Overview of the 2024 Major Comprehensive Plan update.
Great. Good evening, Chair Bautista, Vice Chair Sandoval, and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Jonathan Morales, Associate Planner. Here with Christy Osborne, CED Director. So today, I'm going to share my screen real quick. So the purpose of today's meeting is to go over an overview of the 2024 Periodic Comprehensive Plan update process. This is for the 2024 to 2044 cycle. In your packet tonight, you should have received a memorandum, scope of work, timeline. Those 2 items are draft at this point. This presentation, and then the next item, we'll discuss the RFP, which is also included in your packet. So comprehensive plans are mandated for each jurisdiction in Washington State that is fully or partially planning under the Growth Management Act. So City of Mountlake Terrace is a jurisdiction that is fully planning, and so we are required to submit a periodic update to our comprehensive plan by December 31st, 2024. Periodic updates are required every 10 years. This is a change from previous statute, which stated that periodic updates were required every 8 years. So this allows jurisdictions a little bit more time to get their updates completed. So the purpose of periodic updates are to bring comp plans into compliance with new GMA requirements, GMA requirements and ensure consistency with GMA. It's also a way to ensure that cities and counties are planning to accommodate population growth through available land capacity, available housing units, and employment. So GMA requires review of comprehensive plan and development regulations to bring them up to date with any relevant changes in the GMA, recent case law, and to respond to changes in the land use and population growth. As depicted in this visual here, comprehensive plans are informed by the Growth Management Act, followed by Vision 2050, which is a PSRC, the Puget Sound Regional Council, and multi-county planning policies, followed by Snohomish County countywide planning policies. And then these items inform the update to the comprehensive plans. Regarding population, the Office of Financial Management provides jurisdictions with 20-year population estimates. So these projections are developed every 5 years. So based on the most recent in-issue growth target through the countywide planning policies, by 2044, the estimate is about 34,710 persons in Mountlake Terrace. These are not a final number, and we're still waiting for the final numbers to come through the OFM. And we anticipate having that in mid-March, late March. So a big change in the GMA has to do with housing and specifically provision of affordable housing and accommodation for emergency housing. So HB 1220 requires jurisdictions to plan for and accommodate emergency and affordable housing for all income levels at each income band. So this is extremely low income to moderate income households. We're also required to document existing and projected housing needs, include a statement of goals, policies, objectives, and mandatory provisions for moderate density housing options within the UGA urban growth area, identify sufficient capacity of land for all housing needs, emergency housing, and emergency shelters, as well as permanent supportive housing, make adequate provisions for existing and projected housing needs of all income brackets, including documenting barriers and actions needed to achieve housing availability, identify local policies and regulations that result in racially disparate impacts, displacement, and exclusion in housing, and identify and implement policies and regulations to begin to address and begin to undo such impacts. And finally, identify areas that may be at greater risk of displacement and establish anti-displacement policies. So this is a major part of this comprehensive plan update process that we anticipate will take a lot of work to do along with a consultant. And these should be integrated into the housing element and land use elements. So this chart here is just a brief overview of what the periodic update process may look like. Right now, the first step is to develop a work program and schedule, then a public participation plan. There's a visioning process integrated in this, and then the actual review and update of the comprehensive plan policies and review and update of development regulations. Between these two items, a key deliverable will be the Commerce Periodic Update Checklist. And this checklist will also allow us to identify what needs to be updated in both the comprehensive plan and in our code development regulations. So we're also integrating sub-area planning through this comprehensive plan update. So we have called out specifically the Melody Hill neighborhood sub-area and Cascade View, which we would like to develop sub-area plans. There's already a Melody Hill sub-area plan, so we may look at that and see what needs to be updated to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and also with the population growth targets. So in our current existing comprehensive plan, following the 1990 passage of the Growth Management Act, the initial comprehensive plan for the city was established for the 1992 to 2012 cycle. The last major comprehensive plan update was in 2015. This was followed by amendments in 2017 and 2019. Jurisdictions can update their comprehensive plans annually through the amendment process. So 2017 and 2019 were some of the most recent ones. A major part of the 2024 comprehensive plan update for the city will be to update our environmental impact statement, which hasn't been updated since 1983. And then updates to associated plans include recreation parks and open space plan, most recently updated in 2022. So these plans that are listed here, it's not necessarily to update them, it's more about ensuring that what's in these plans are reflected in the comprehensive plan through additional policies that we may add, just to ensure that they're consistent with these plans here. Town Center Sub-Area Plan was adopted in 2019, Shoreline Master Plan 2019, Critical Areas Ordinance 2018, Transportation Master Plan in 2020. So currently these are the existing elements in our comprehensive plan. So what is highlighted with an asterisk are mandated by the Growth Management Act. I do want to make one edit, and that's the recreation element is actually not required. So we're showing here about 3 elements that are not required that we currently have, so I think that's a great thing. And each element has goals and policies which then inform development regulations and code. So an overview of our draft scope of work that we've prepared that's shown in the RFP that went out. First, as I stated, was the work program and schedule. We're going to want the selected consultant to draft a project management plan. That'll be helpful to ensure what their working style may be and what necessities they may need and how much time commitment they'll need with staff. Public participation plan to drive the community engagement process throughout the duration of the comp plan update. Visioning and ongoing community engagement. So there'll be engagement at each step of the comprehensive plan update. Review and update of the existing comprehensive plan. Review and update of existing development regulations and code. Sub-area plans, again, Melody Hill and Cascade View. SEPA scoping and the draft and final EIS. And Planning Commission and City Council meetings and presentations to be determined at this point, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of time with you guys. And then final adoption and implementation. This slide here is a tentative timeline. So depicted here, you can see a majority of the work, a bulk of the work will be between summer of 2023 and summer of 2024. Right now we're winter 2023, so we've drafted a scope of work and timeline. We've just issued the RFP on Friday, and we hope to select a consultant in by April 10. The next step after that will be immediately to jump into the visioning process. So this process would be to examine the existing community vision to see if it still is reflective of the community of Mountlake Terrace. As you can see here, there's the line item for a community advisory committee. We would like to engage a community advisory committee as part of this process. So TBD on what that looks like, but we do want to work with the consultant to identify the process for that, and also identify potential members from our community to be engaged in that capacity. And yeah, I think that covers everything I had. As far as the next steps, we will be going before council this Thursday, March 2nd, to give a similar presentation, just an overview of the comprehensive plan update process. We've just issued the RFP on Friday. Submittals are due by March 17th. So following the submission date, we will work fast to review these proposals and select the consultant by April 10. Again, these are draft dates, but we want to stick with them. Finalize scope of work program, and project schedule with the consultant. And then council review and approval on April 17th, city council meeting, and then kick off by April 24th with the consultant. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to any questions you may have.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not that familiar with what, I think the housing element might be new for us this year, or this round, right?
No, so housing element has been mandated by the Growth Management Act. So we currently have one. What's new is the HB 1220 requirements, which is specific to affordable housing. And also identifying housing policies that may lead to racially disparate impacts. So incorporating that analysis and study is something that we want to integrate into the housing element currently.
Okay. How specific is it in terms of like what is actually required? Are we like, targeting a certain number of units? Are we writing regulations? Are we creating a board? What is generally required with that?
So consistent with the growth targets, we do need to identify adequate provisions of housing. So that is identifying housing unit numbers and land capacity as well. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I would also like to add, currently legislative sessions going on. I just read all the bills that are still alive. There's numerous housing bills. And so I think we're not going to know what we need to do until the end of the legislative session to see, but there is quite a bit of missing middle housing, which is, kind of affordable housing provisions, accessory dwelling units. I saw a bill that's still alive that you could subdivide your parcel basically without going through a subdivision process. There is no parking requirements if you're within proximity of a transit center. There's a whole host of bills that could affect Mountlake Terrace fairly significantly. So, and not only in proximity to the transit center, but in every single family district in the city, essentially. Anything, we're in an urban growth boundary, our whole city. So I think we know what the House bill was going in. I think we're going to have a lot of work to be done on our housing element after this legislative session, because I know that this has been a work in progress for about the last 3 years, pretty hard, where the legislature and the governors wanted to move forward legislation on various fronts. So we'll just kind of wait to see. Housing element is an original element back when GMA was adopted back in 1990. So it's always been there. I think that it's, typically been the land use element and the transportation element have kind of been the stars of the show. And I think you're seeing the housing element nudge in there as one of the top 3 moving forward.
And it sounds like there might be some impact in like the sort of professional qualifications we would be seeking based on what bills wind up going through in that case.
Yeah, I think probably what we'll see, I would imagine with most firms, is there's going to be the primary firm and then there's going to be sub-consultants. And I would imagine every firm is going to have expertise in housing as a sub-consultant moving forward for all of the planning efforts.
Just to add, the Department of Commerce has been leading a lot of the housing work for the state. So a lot of the requirements that have come out of that HB 1220, the Department of Commerce is developing draft guidance for jurisdictions to use as we update our housing element and related plans. Any other questions?
Not seeing anybody else. I have one. So we've listed 2 sub areas on this timeline, and we had previously had discussions about this and kind of the priority of which ones we wanted to tackle first, but the intention was to tackle all of them. Was it just the 2 that are listed here because that's what you think we'll only get to these 2 during this comp plan update phase, but we're still going to be working on the rest of them as well?
Yeah, so I mean, the conversation was we want to do the whole city in sub areas, but with the money that we have in the effort, what are the 2 that we're going to focus on more robust than the others? And so those were the 2 that were selected. So we just have the opportunity to do a little bit more work on those as part of the comp plan update. We'll touch on the other ones. We're not going to be able to do every sub area and do the major update and update all of our development regulations. But just by the fact that we're going to have to look at the whole city, we're going to have to do updates in every area. We're just going to have a little bit more opportunity to focus on those two areas. And it might be as we go through this and depending on the legislation, that in discussing it with the consultants and with you guys moving forward, maybe we want to shift that a little bit. So we'll have to see. We're going to have about roughly 12,000 folks we're going to have to accommodate right now. Town center, high end, we're looking at, about 8,000 that we've already planned for, plus, other folks in other areas. So we'll just need to take a look at that and, take a look at transportation, capital facilities. Where do we have, good water and sewer and stormwater capabilities and good nodes with a multimodal possibilities. And, from that, maybe we shift a little bit. We'll see. But right now, we're basically telling the consultant, hey, consultant, we have 2 areas that we want to do quite a bit of work in. So,
Just want to make sure everything's still on the plate.
yeah, we've got a 2-pound sausage and a 1-pound casing for like the next year and a half, basically. So we got a lot of work to do.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I had a question. The traffic model, does the city have their own, or do we use a regional one?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I can find out the information.
Yeah.
And come back with it.
Yeah, because I'm just curious how they're going to handle the light rail, because it's not going to open until 2024. So I was just curious, and that's going to be a big impact to our traffic.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any questions, comments? I think I have a couple of questions when it comes to that, the stuff coming out of the legislature, but I think we won't know until.
Yeah. I mean, we can kind of keep you updated as we go, because there's always the cutoffs of, did it make it out of this committee or, this or that. But I only saw a couple of bills that actually had died so far that were going to kind of impact planning, I would say, more so. But there's still quite a bit of bills kicking around right now in the legislature. So, yeah, stay tuned. We'll see what happens and
Yeah, I'd like to see what their definitions are.
how they're going to divide the money up. Because then you have to start putting numbers to all of these ideas and, all that good stuff. So,
Yeah, I mean, just your top bullet point, plan for accommodate emergency and
Yep.
affordable housing at all income. I was like, well, what's your definition of that?
Yeah.
What are you expecting us to plan for? I mean, what is your definition of emergency housing?
Yeah.
Is that setting up a gym with a bunch of cots, or is that
right.
actual,
Yeah.
dwelling units? So it's,
So, yeah, the way it's written in statute, it's emergency housing / shelters. So I think that's still pretty broad. So,
yeah, because it could be a lot of different people could qualify for that in a lot of different circumstances. So.
Well, and what we're going to be faced with being one of, we're the first batch as far as jurisdiction goes, and this typically happens a lot with growth management over the last 30-some years, is that once the legislation passes, then the rulemaking has to happen. Well, that rulemaking is going to be happening when we're working on our comp plan. And so that's the difficult part. If you're not one of those later jurisdictions, it's like, well, what the heck does that mean? What should we be doing? So all we can do is wait to see what gets adopted or gets passed by the legislature. We'll see, the best we can working with Commerce and others to figure that out and do the best we can moving forward.
I mean, they can't expect us to be mind readers, and if we're doing it at the same time, then it's possible that we end up finishing our due diligence and our process before they finish theirs.
It could
And we,
be.
and we would just have to redo ours at a later date, but
Right.
we can't hold it up.
Yeah.
Because,
You just got to, yeah, because at the end of the day, we still have a deadline, which is December 31st of '24. And they already pushed it because of COVID. Our original date was 2023, but because of COVID, that got pushed a year. So, and that was part of the reason they changed it to 10 years from 8 years. And also just that growth management has been around over 30 years. So people have had a few cycles with updating their comp plans, so.
Do we have some float in the budget in case we need to hire some extra sub-consultants at the end of like the legislative process and we know
We
more
may.
about? All right, like to hear that.
and then maybe this is getting a little too far ahead, but in terms of what the deliverables can be from the consultants, for the sub-area planning. Again, I brought this up, in another meeting previously, just, when we were doing the town center process, if we were asking for certain deliverables that we never got, that I think would have helped a lot for us to see, from, it's like, well, that consultant company was providing it for other jurisdictions, because I was reading about it in the newspapers. So I know they had the capability of doing it, just we weren't getting it. I'm sure, staff will have discussions with them early on, and, feel free if you want to, it's been so long since we did the town center, I can't even remember what the specifics were. I remember we were looking for more visuals, I know that for sure, that we weren't necessarily getting
Right,
some of the
right.
stuff that we were proposing. And these are two very different sub-areas, but with similarities. So,
Yeah.
and with some potential for real redevelopment on these larger commercial parcels, so.
We'll have a little bit more internal graphic help as well.
Okay.
With mapping and graphic capabilities, so that will, that'll be handy for us to have. And then, having some resources. We got a little bit of extra money for housing already that I'd asked for, anticipating that was going to be a heavy lift. And we have to update our environmental information because it's so old. So there's a lot to do. We'll do the best we can with the money we have and realize that, we're going to just have to keep plucking away at, after we get done with our major update, that we have more work to do, and we're just going to continue to put it in the budget so we can get all of our plans to a good place, which is what we've wanted to do for quite a number of years, so.
And then what, you said it early in the presentation, what was sort of the projected population count?
So the initial estimate was 34,710. That's from 2021. So again, these are just draft numbers. We're waiting on the final.
And that's what they're projecting that we will. That we're
By
expected
2044, yep.
To absorb.
Yes.
And then do we know what the most recent census update was?
We're at about 22.6, roughly, I believe. Give or take.
Because once upon a time, we were around that, and then they said we lost a bunch.
Yeah,
So we're sort of gaining back what we lost. So it was a big deal when we dropped down before, because that put us in a lower, I can't remember the specific category, but it put us in a lower category for certain things. And
right.
that was really frustrating. I think we protested.
You gain, it depends on your number. Sometimes you gain things, sometimes you lose things as you
were
gain
losing things,
populations,
okay.
right? So it's kind of a give and take, but we are going to get $125,000 from the state for planning efforts, and we get that in 2 chunks for each year, 2023 and 2024. And then we also received funds from the council to update our environmental work, which there's a lot of work that needs to be done as part of that. And then the money we have for the comp plan update as well. So we're not doing bad, but this is a lot of work, so it's expensive.
How often do they update the numbers for what they're expecting the different jurisdictions to absorb in terms of growth?
So that's every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
Yep.
So it's possible in 5 years, the 34,000 number might go up.
Yeah.
Right, and we wouldn't have to address it in 5 years. We would address it in the next major update. But if we were doing any work on our comp plan, which, as you guys can see, 17 and 19, I mean, we do different things as we move forward, then, yeah.
I think it would just be prudent to expect the number to be higher than 34,000 and plan for that anyway.
Yeah,
Build that into our comp plan, absorb it, throughout the city, plan for it in advance. That way we're not sort of, caught with our, let's see here, hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, but, it just doesn't catch us by surprise. It's like we were expecting it, we planned for it, it's already in our plan, so when it comes time to do the next update, it doesn't have to be as drastic because we've already accounted for it.
How do they assign those numbers? Do they look at our number and just increase it by some random percent? Like this time they said, 60%. Or do they, is it more of a dialogue with the Growth Council?
it's not a dialogue.
No, it's not.
It's the state, and they take a look at three numbers, a high growth, it's all projections, a high projection, medium, and a low. Jurisdictions usually do a medium because there's consequences when you do a really high one too, is that then you have to show that you have adequate capital facilities in order to accommodate that growth, right? So, and streets and all these other things. And so everything kind of works hand in hand. But they're taking a look at many factors when we're deciding where growth is going to go. So it starts as a regional growth projection. And then from that, it's divvied up into the individual jurisdictions. And so for us, for instance, we're getting light rail. So that plays a factor in we're going to get a higher population projection because it's anticipated, hey, we're going to grow a lot faster than, Mill Creek off the beaten path, So, there's a whole series of factors that they use. It's a projection, though. And typically those projections are higher than what our population's going to be. Like, I'm not sure what our projection was for this cycle, but, we're below that projection. But then again, light rail is a game changer. And I do think that that's going to have a large impact on the city moving forward. I mean, we're already seeing it, so.
Okay, so it sounds like there's maybe a little bit of a disconnect between what numbers we think we're going to get and what numbers they tell us we need to get in that case.
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of select from the choices. So growth management is it's supposed to be bottoms up, local planning, but you still have guidelines from the legislation, because essentially if you didn't, then everybody would just be doing their own thing, right? So there's some certain things, like Jonathan was saying, we have a checklist of showing certain things and how our planning's meeting that. And I would say the legislation I've seen this last couple of years is very top-down approach, which is now the state's kind of starting to tell us what we're going to do to accommodate housing and other things. So, we'll see how that moves forward.
So the risk of us saying, well, we've planned for 35,000, or you told us to plan for 35,000, we've planned for 50,000, and then they come back and say, well, actually, you need to plan for 55,000. That's probably not going to happen in that case.
Correct, yeah. Not till next time.
And I think we're all aware of it here, but, you know, when we talk about light rail, it's not just one station, it's two for us. We're only
Right.
3/4 a mile outside of
Absolutely.
light rail, and I think that's one of the reasons why we have the neighborhood, hopefully formerly known as Cascade View. I never liked that name. It's not that old either. You know, that's why we're looking at that as well, because that is the closest neighborhood to the Linwood station. And
Yeah.
It is a straight shot. So
Yeah.
if it wasn't for a hill and a kind of a swampy area, you would probably see a higher probably pedestrian count of people walking to that station as well.
Yeah.
That feels like something we should coordinate with Linwood, because it's not really like, it's across the magic line on the map. And so like, you know, in our zoning plan, nothing exists out there, but it's actually pretty significant, and the connections to that station are going to be really critical for what we have to do.
And they are making those changes around the station for transportation in coordination with community transit, changing the lane configuration, the stoplight configurations to be able to absorb a higher number of buses going in there during the peak commuting hours. But yeah, as soon as you leave the station, around the station itself, there's not, you know, it's not like that coordination is going to meet us up at the city limits, so.
Yeah, and if we're half or 3/4 of a mile out of there, like, I mean, people could walk to it, but then you got the interstate and the creek that always floods on the way.
It's not a great walk. Like I was saying, you know, if this were anywhere else, and, you know, get rid of the hill, get rid of the swamp, and you put sidewalks on both sides of the street, you would definitely see a higher pedestrian draw. But you know what? There are people who are still going to walk, you know.
Yeah, I bike up that.
They will come, and a lot of them are going to walk, because well, community transit said when they start killing their regional bus routes and focus on local and let the light rail pick it up, they're going to increase the frequency of the local connectors. So rather than having to wait a half hour, an hour for whatever that bus route now is, they've changed the number of that route like 3 or 4 times since I can remember, whatever it's called now. You know, maybe that starts coming every 10, 15 minutes, and yeah, you might take the bus rather than walk, but you know, if it's some parts of the day, if it's only an hour, it's quicker to walk. So, but yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. I would love to work with our neighbors to the north. I'm not going to hold my breath.
If
They
we
have
can,
a lot on their plate, so.
if we can find a way, though, I think it would be worth the effort to try and coordinate that, because that line is, you know, mostly imaginary, like, as you experience it as a person. So I don't know what that looks like or how that process happens, but
It might, you know, the conversation and dialogue might open up a little bit more once we start working on the sub area up there, since 212th, you know, with any kind of redevelopment and growth that's going to happen there, you know, they're on the other side of 212th. And so what we're doing on our side, you know, will in some way affect them as well. You know, maybe it's not affecting them as high of a priority as, you know, some of their other major arterials, but that the north side of that street is their jurisdiction, so they're going to be impacted by what we're planning to do.
yeah. So as we're including that sub-area plan in this RFQ, we should probably, I don't know, investigate how that connection happens. I'm not sure how it happens. It sounds like there might be some impediments to it, and I see you laughing here, so, yeah.
You're asking for something impossible.
Yeah. We're always hopeful, but, you know, we've been around long enough to you know, to know how this usually plays out, so. Does anybody else have any other questions, comments? Obviously, this is a work in progress, and, you know, things will change as we progress, but, all right. And then, of course, I'm sure council will have their own input and questions for this, so. Okay. Well, if we've got nothing on this, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, number 6. Oh, selection of planning commission representatives sit on the review committee.
I have a proposal, Before we select a representative, I think the representative should be able to sort of communicate like the concerns or aspirations or whatever it is we want to communicate of like the entire committee. Do we want to have a discussion about that and maybe take some notes?
Well, even before that, I want to know what, the review committee, I don't think we've had a review committee previously when we've done comp plan updates, so I'd like to maybe just find out what this is first.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So since this is such an important comprehensive plan update process, a lot of moving pieces and a lot of items will have a heavy lift. So we anticipate getting a lot of proposals in. So part of that is to review the proposals and score them in order to select finalists and interview them. So currently we have about 5 staff ready to serve on this review committee, and we wanted to pose to you the idea of selecting a commissioner to be on this review committee to assist with scoring the proposals. So as far as time commitment, we anticipate that the week of March 20th would be the week that you would review each of the proposals that come in and score them. And then on Friday, the 24th of March, we will hold a debrief meeting to select the finalists. I'm anticipating maybe 3 finalists,
Yeah,
about.
most likely.
And then we would go into interviews the week of April 3rd and hopefully select one by April 10th. So for your commitment, it will be the week of March 20th.
Who are the staff members on the committee?
So we have representation from Stormwater, Parks, and Planning.
With a couple of alternates
Yes.
as well on that, but representation from the Planning Commission would be great. If somebody, however you guys would like to, or if somebody's available, or how you guys would like to select that, but we'd like to have one of you participate if you could.
You said March 20th?
The week of March 20th.
So it could be done, everything could be done on your own time to review during that week, but we would need somebody to come in on that Friday to join the rest of the group to have a conversation about their scoring and then to select the finalist to interview.
Is on that Friday, is that going to be an all-day thing, or is that?
No, I would imagine maybe anticipate 3 hours-ish. And I mean, since the rest of it is staff members, we could work either a morning or an afternoon, depending on what works. And then I can just tell everybody that they have to be here otherwise.
Are you planning on interviewing the 3 finalists?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And-
Absolutely.
When we're getting the review and score proposals, is that just the representative or is that the entire planning commission?
That's just the rep from the Planning Commission.
Okay.
For that meeting on Friday, we can make it a virtual meeting so that you don't have to actually come in person. We can have a Zoom link.
That's helpful.
Yeah, it is.
I was, being able to zoom in the last meeting.
Yeah,
Helped.
absolutely.
Granted, I was sitting in my car in a cold parking lot watching it snow, and I was like, but yeah, no, that was definitely helpful that was an option.
Yeah, I get it that people have employment responsibilities, totally get that. It's just nice to have some outside input as well and somebody from the Planning Commission, so.
It definitely you know, for a planning commission rep, it definitely would, at least in my opinion, to have, you know, be somebody who has gone through this cycle before,
That's what I think.
who is familiar with comp plan updates. So, you know, having done them in the past and, you know, knowing what works and what doesn't work.
Doesn't
or
work.
Maybe things that they'd like to see moving forward. You know, a lot of that is usually budget constraints usually is the limitation on that, but,
I think it'd also be good to know who has experience in this kind of process. I know, like I've had experience in being an interviewee, but not so much an interviewer.
yeah.
Has anyone been part of a process like this before?
For systems, not for city planning.
Is the final process, would this be something more where the city kind of proposes the base questions and then whoever's on the panel can, you know, either ask additional questions or bring up additional issues? Or is it like, because I've been in a lot of different interview processes, or is it going to be like, all the questions are set and it's just somebody takes turns?
So for this process, this would be without any of the applicants, where this selection committee would actually be selecting who to interview. At the time of the interview,
Gotcha.
there would be select questions, of course, and then, as in what happens with most interviews, if there's an answer, then there can be a follow-up from one of the people that's interviewing. But for this one, it's reviewing all the proposals that come in. Hopefully, we get a good selection of those and then narrowing it down to who's actually going to get interviewed.
Gotcha.
So it would be from that, the people that are going to be sitting down to interview, plus,
So part of that, I'm sure with the submissions and what, you know, when you're doing the review, you can kind of see what path they're intending to go down and
right.
what their capabilities are and what kind of deliverables they're saying that,
And
hey,
the-
we can, for this price point, we can give you this, this, and this.
Right, right, and how, what their approach is, and, you know, we'll have a scoring card, and each individual will score it based on, you know, what they think that score should be for those different things. What's their approach? What's their experience? Who are their subs? You know, what experience do they have? What do we want in our RFP that we've said it is important? How have they demonstrated that they've thought out to address that for us versus like some cookie cutter, any town USA? So, right, can we tell that they've done their homework on Mountlake Terrace and what we're looking for versus, you know, so all those things.
I'm reminded of the consultants that they brought in for the 07, 08 town center update. These guys weren't local. They were out of Portland, so they would have to drive up. And they had public charrettes that they did. And, you know, they really hit a home run with, you know, their public engagement and their charrettes, and it was really well attended. And it was, the only thing I, you know, only would think about is like, wow, but they're in Portland. You know, so, I mean, obviously, you know, with technology now is a lot better even than, you know, back then. So, I mean, really, that's a hop, skip, and a jump. That's no big deal. But the idea that, you know, a company from Portland bid and won to do that, you know, to do that cycle, then do you anticipate it be mostly local Pacific Northwest based?
I would imagine so, and I think that is something to consider, because travel and expense can really eat into the budget. And so, you know, we want to be cognizant of that, because you want to get the most work you can. At the same time, you want to get a firm that has a proven track record, that, you know, what can they show us that they've done for other jurisdictions, that it's of quality, that we would, you know, so, you know, there's a lot of things to take a look at, but that's what, you know, we give them the RFP. Now they need to demonstrate. Jonathan did some really good work on, hey, here's some rough outline, but now they need to go and put their stamp on what that's supposed to look like.
And As far as eligibility, on page 6 of the RFP, we do have minimum requirements of what we're looking for. So the first point there is minimum of 5 years experience working in Washington State with knowledge of the Growth Management Act and SEPA, so the State Environmental Policy Act. Minimum of 5 years of experience working with local jurisdictions on comp planning and implementation, and experience working with smaller jurisdictions. So these are the minimum requirements, so that's a good baseline to,
Small, but not too small.
not too small, yeah.
Medium jurisdictions, how's that?
Mid-size. is
There we
better.
go. With aspirations for more. Okay. Yeah, I know. I remember when we were doing the artist selection for the light rail station, and one of the concerns was local artists versus out-of-state artists. And, you know, the artist that they ended up picking is an out-of-state artist out of Southern California. And so it's just like, well, how, anything when it's not local, well, how receptive are they going to be to make, you know, coming up here on a moment's notice or you know, making frequent trips up here? It's not like they can just, you know, swing by on their way home. You know,
Right, right.
It's definitely a consideration, and I know that was during that selection process, that was a big concern. So, okay. So are you looking for somebody to be selected tonight then?
Well, I think somebody could be, or we'll have a meeting before then at our first planning commission in March, and so you guys can make a selection then,
Okay.
if that works out, and that's fine.
Maybe for those who'd be interested, you know, maybe to look at their schedules and see
Yep.
if that's something.
See if that week of March 20th works, and then being available on March 24th for, I would say, roughly about a 3-hour duration. Probably
Yeah.
be ample time.
The fact that it could be Zoom makes it even easier. 'Cause
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Say they can't, they can, you know, maybe step away for a little bit from work, but not be gone for the whole day.
Right.
That might be an option for them. Okay. That's good. Because I know the email that went out for the thing this Friday, that they were looking for representation. I was like, well, that'll be day 3 of a new job assignment for me.
Uh-huh.
I was like, I don't think I can. I mean, I've not even met the boss in person yet, so I don't think I can ask them just. I was like, yeah, hi, by the way, I need Friday off.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to pull that, but that's far enough notice where, you know, something like that might be doable.
Well, you know, you're on a planning commission of another city, so it's like, you're just busy. What kind of role do we want this person to play? Like in my mind, you know, we're 6, possibly 7 people at that point. We all probably have our own thoughts on what sort of qualifications and things that we want people to review, that we want from our consultants. I would think that it would be good to have some discussion on what those are, so that rather than just sort of being a random person picked, or, you know, an experienced person picked, or however we decide, they're able to sort of communicate a lot of the concerns. And then hopefully if the people who are, you know, responding to these RFPs are then, you know, smart, they'll listen and then be able to address sort of the comments from whatever we discuss. Do we want to have maybe a session like next planning meeting where we sort of think for a little bit, and then maybe talk about some of the qualifications we want from them before, so that when the representative is selected, they're more of like a representative as opposed to just sort of a singular person?
It might be a little bit difficult for those who have never gone through this type of cycle before to have seen previous examples of maybe what were good things off of previous contractors, you know, in the deliverables that they gave the city, versus other cycles where, you know, people in the community felt, you know, we were wanting a little bit more, you know, we felt, and asked for more and never got it. But I mean, if you guys want to, you know, have a little bit further discussion, or we could have that discussion right now.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that, kind of strikes me when I was, so I was part of the town center task force. And one of the things that kind of sticks with me coming out of that was that when the consultant like sort of came through and we developed our regulations, a lot of the precedents they pulled were from these like, you know, towns that had these giant roads and these huge parcels that they were able to sort of easily redevelop with Texas donuts. But then they applied that to town center, which, you know, has a few of those parcels, but then has several like smaller lot parcels. And so now what we're seeing is like for anything to develop, you have to like buy up a whole like block of houses and then build it so that you can fit your parking garage on it, basically. And what I'd like to see is, you know, maybe sort of in reaction to that is somebody able to like sort of look at the regulations we're proposing to change and then say, well, how does that translate into buildings and how likely are those buildings to be built and what do those buildings look like? And I think, you know, if I remember right, you were kind of around for the other town center redevelopment process, and like one of the critiques that came out of that we learned was that like they chopped up the blocks too much and like nothing ever got redeveloped there as well. So I think we've got this history of like sort of making these plans, but then like they don't quite translate into buildings. And so that's like some experience I'd like to see from the consultants that we eventually wind up hiring. And so like things like this, for example, I think would be good to sort of collaborate on and decide as a group what we think is important from a consultant to have, and then whoever is selected can go and you know, sort of using the background of everyone, be able to make their own determination of rank and interview these people properly. And, you know, if we all look through our, you know, experience, we probably find other things like this that we think are maybe important to have in a consultant.
Yeah, I think, you know, part of the job of the consultant is to synthesize the ideas that the community is giving them. When it comes to the most recent town center plan, you know, in terms of like you were talking about, you know, the building size and type, that's what we were asking for. That's what we wanted to see happen in our town center. So that's you know, that's the code that was written. The previous the issues with the previous town center was, you know, we were asking, you know, for a bigger mix of building types and building styles that then the development community came back and said, oh, it doesn't it doesn't pencil out for us to build it this way with these type of setbacks with the wedding cake. But yet I go to other jurisdictions and I see those buildings being built all the time. So it's, you know, how much is what is delivered, is that what we actually asked for? And then how much is it the development community trying to blow smoke up our behinds, you know, saying, oh, we can't do that when, yeah, you can. So.
Yeah, and I think a good consultant would be able to tell us that sort of impartially because we hired them. Like they would be able to analyze our sites and say, well, this might work, you know, this might not work. Like it would, you know, based on the lessons we learned from previous experience, I think this would be a good kind of expertise to have, for example. And if we can find somebody who is able to bring that experience to the table, I think that would be something that speaks in favor of their technical proficiency.
So does everybody, do they want to spend some time on the next meeting talking about this, or do you guys feel comfortable just making a decision tonight? This would be the question.
I think first of all, we should ask, you know, who wants to be on it.
Yeah.
Like that week, you know, I'm going to be out of town, so, you know, and I would say, you know, I would like to sit on it, but I'm out. And I've been on both sides. I did the transportation element for Yakima, Wenatchee, East Wenatchee. When I first started my career, I did all the transportation element. That's why I asked about the model. Did the model and written, you know, and whoever the committee is, I work for consulting now, it's just engineering. Whoever they put as a project manager, they're going to put somebody good. And it's impossible, though, to have them, to request that person really stay on that project.
Right, right.
Because that person's usually the highest, one of the higher paid. And sometimes, it's nice to have them, but, we really probably couldn't afford them to
Right.
have them full-time, right? So they're going to be, reviewing stuff, they're going to have, like I said, they'll have somebody on a transportation element.
Right.
It'll be probably an engineer, a transportation engineer, like myself. They'll have an environmental, and then it's going to be up to us, you guys to guide them, how we want. They're all, if they have 5 years experience, I guarantee you they have a template. And they're gonna take our template, right, and improve it. So,
Yeah.
that's, I think, first of all, who wants to be on that committee? So, I'll say I can't be on it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I definitely have, the experience serving on, working and doing multiple comp plan updates plus sub-area updates, and then items related to the light rail. I would need to check with my new boss. So I would say if it was going to be me, I would say, it would be helpful to maybe have a backup just in case. But the fact that it's going to be Zoom or possibly to be Zoom, that's good too. But I think also to remember is that this is just us, as one part of a larger group, representatives from the city departments making a decision on who who gets the bid. But, the real nuts and bolts happens once that work starts. And then that's when we can actually say, this is what we really want to see. And this is how we, we're hoping to partner with you to do that. This is just to get a sense of which one of these is the best person that could do that. So it's not to, put the cart before the horse on this one. Because, there's a whole bunch, there's a laundry list of things that, we want, but we just need to see if they can demonstrate, if they're even able to provide that.
Yeah.
So does
Yeah.
anybody else?
I would also like to be on this committee, but I don't want it to just be my own opinions. I think it would be good to get sort of the opinions of the entire planning committee and sort of be more of a representative as opposed to like a single person. I've definitely in my professional life have been part of teams that have gone on interviews and things like that. So I have a general sense of how the process works and looking at sub-consultants and things like that. I have some, working in the area for a while, I have some familiarity with the different consultants. But I think it would be we would be able to give our strongest opinion collectively by sort of discussing it. And if we're even able to get everyone else to sort of evaluate, share what all the proposals are among the planning committee, maybe through email or something. I think that would be procedurally maybe a better way to operate.
Of course, Chris, you just stepped out of the room. The only thing I would want to double check on that would be to, since it's a request for a proposal for a city, I'm assuming that their submission is open to the Public Records Act, which means that we are free to talk about that openly at our meeting if we're discussing it ahead of time. Or is this a case where it is considered confidential until the decision is made?
Yeah, I'll defer that to Christie. I'm not sure.
Because that would definitely determine how we can do this moving forward. And
Right.
engaging with everybody, saying, hey, this is a summary of everything that I read with every single application, and this is the way I'm thinking of going. But again, it's also the representative from this body is just one person sitting with other representatives from the other departments as well. So it's
Right.
not just, I'm choosing candidate E and that's who we're going to go with. No, we provide our input and feedback, but it's it's not just one person making this decision.
Right, absolutely.
How many pages Do you have a limit on there yet?
Yeah, so the maximum is 20 pages.
That's a lot, actually.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering, I mean, what he's saying is, I mean, you know, have us review, say we get 15 proposals and 20 pages. That's a lot.
A lot of pages. Yeah.
You know, I don't,
Yeah, well, you know, that's just one example of what can be done, but I think the important point is that it's, you know, we're sort of agreeing on what kind of criteria we're looking at, and then hopefully they're responding to that in their proposals. I think also there's not necessarily a planning commission meeting between when the proposals are due and when the interviews happen, if I remember right. So it might not, like, I don't think we can, I don't think like it lines up from a time standpoint to actually have everyone do that, but.
Did you want to repeat your question?
Yeah, so the question that I had kind of put forward, like right after you walked out, was the submissions from the different consultants as part of this bid process. Is it considered public record? Would we even be able to talk about it openly at a planning commission meeting ahead of time if the calendar lined up that way? Or is this something that where the submissions are, you know, confidential until the review?
Yeah, it would just be like if we were interviewing for a staff member, it's, yeah,
It's all confidential.
right, correct, so.
So I think that being said, it's just picking somebody who, you know, has experience dealing with these updates before, you know, with the city before, either sub areas or comp plans themselves, and being able to synthesize that previous experience with kind of the current visioning that we're seeing for, you know, these new sub areas that haven't gotten much attention, you know, in decades or at all. So I think part of that would also be, you know, having the knowledge of the previous sub area updates that we did. Cascade View has never had one. Melody Hill, we did that in, that was 07, 08, and the other town center was 09. But yeah, we, you know, those, it's been a while. And so knowing what happened in that plan and what we really haven't seen out of it since then, just because the development hasn't really happened there, but how the development is going to be spurred on by, at least in that sub area, the potential for a future light rail station. Depending on which Sound Transit official you're talking to, it's either, oh yeah, it's still a potential, or it's, no, it's not. No. So, but it's understanding that even if the station isn't going to be like right there at 220th in the freeway at some point in the future, that area is still going to see considerable growth and redevelopment. So, you know, understanding that and just being able to make a determination based on the applicants if they're qualified enough. I'm sure they're all qualified, but, you know, which one we think would be the best moving forward and helping shape our vision or revision in this case.
So how would you guys like to proceed?
People feel comfortable making a decision tonight on this, or do you?
I'd like another.
If you wanted to wait till the next meeting, then maybe explain what you think would need to happen between now and then, or if there would be more information to delay a decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much a decision of the people as, like, of the person as maybe communicating what we think is important. And I think that discussion might be helpful to have as well, so that, you know, whoever is selected can go and take that information into account as a body. So I think I would prefer to wait till next week and have a discussion on what is important, what kind of important qualifications do we see, and what do we think has been missing in the past. This might be a helpful thing with expertise. And then also, what kind of things do we think are important for criteria for grading these applications?
Does everybody else feel that way, or do they think we could still have those discussions next week, but make the decision on who the representative would be right now?
Oh, that could go both ways.
I would try to refrain from too much paralysis by analysis, and maybe if we can commit to someone who is willing to take feedback, and then again, all of this is being driven by a scoring mechanism, which, from my point of view, we probably just need to drill into which one of those scores do we want to focus on, and maybe ask the person who's representing us to
Pay attention to that.
scrutinize, some of those scores that we're concerned about without trying to drive too much decision-making.
And there's also what actually makes a good score in that case, I think would be helpful to communicate as well. Like for the transportation element, in my mind, I get around town without a car, but I'm also like a grown, able-bodied man. And I think that having somebody on the team with the experience to be able to make it easier to get around town without a car, but who isn't that, whether it's, a child or somebody with disabilities or whoever might not, still need to get around, but without a motor vehicle, I think that's a really crucially important part of technical expertise as well, because if we're going to add another 15,000 people, we don't have a room for 15,000 more cars. So I think sort of going into what we mean by things like technical expertise is pretty important as well.
With all due respect, I think you're getting way into the details at this juncture, and we really need to come back up and talk about we're selecting, 3 or 4 firms to interview. We can later get to the point where we're getting more detailed, where we're directing where we want to go. So we're going to have 2 things, right? This is what the law says. This is what the growth management says. This is what we got to do. And then this is what we would like to also see in each of these elements in our comp plan. And at that point, we can have that dialogue, because really that dialogue is not only what our vision is, it's what their vision is, right? Because this is what the comp plan's all about, is the community vision. And so through that visioning process and all of those things, that's where we're going to inform the people that have the technical knowledge of those things that we would like to see explored in our comp plan. So I think right now we're just, hey, we have an RFP. Are you showing that you have the 5 years of experience? Can you demonstrate that you've done plans? Okay, you've done a plan for Gig Harbor. Let me go take a look at Gig Harbor's plan and what you've done. That's what we're really trying to assess. And then who's the best out of that pot that submitted? Now we get to the interview. We start drilling down who's the best of those folks. And then we get to, okay, now we're getting more into the details of what you would like to see as a planning commission, what the community would like to see, the outcome of our planning effort. So I would say, let's go through who has the best proposals right now and come back next meeting, take a vote, do whatever, select who you want to represent you guys. The fact of the matter is, this is all about having various viewpoints to be on that selection committee. That's what it's all about. So I would say, I wouldn't worry so much that everybody is on the same page here, because it's going to be an unfair advantage to some people and not others. Bring that general viewpoint of your knowledge along with the other people that are going to be in that selection committee, and everybody is going to be trying to do the same thing, to pick the best people to interview. That's really what we're trying to do, right? So everybody's going to be doing that, and everybody's going to have their own input from whatever experience they've had. Jonathan was a consultant. I was a consultant at one time. we bring different perspectives from different things. All you guys have your different perspective that all melds into making this what it needs to be. So I would just say, pick a rep, and we'll put our heads together, pick the best people that we can to interview, go through that process, and then start fine-tuning the work product that we would like to see.
Do we expect the teams to change, not necessarily the prime, but subcontractors, they might be brought on? later?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I think the subs that get brought on to a job are just as important as the prime.
And it sounds like after this isn't happening at this point. We're expecting them to bring on some different subs in the future, possibly.
No, they're going to tell us who their subs are.
Okay.
And that's part of the thing that we're going to be assessing is who's the primary. Like Miguel said, oh, the really good talker and the bright shiny object is going to come. There's ways of determining how much work gets done there. But you also have to be realistic. And I know in every process, everybody wants everything. I would share that you're never going to get that out of any process that we ever do. And that doesn't mean that the process that you go through for Town Center was a failure. I would say I disagree. I think it was a great process. I think the Town Center process before that was a necessary process. And from each of those processes, we learned things of how to move and improve those things. And a plan is meant to set the groundwork. But just like with development regulations or planning, those are living documents. Those are breathing, and we need to change those as the community changes. So we're making the best plans that we have with the information available to move the community forward. Do you know that COVID's going to happen for 3 years? No, you don't know that. You planned anyways. And then you go back and you say, hey, these are the things that worked really great. You know what? These couple of things, not so much. These kind of suck. So we're going to take those, we're going to put those in the trash can, and we really need to focus on these things to improve that. So just say, I know we have a lot of sub areas, but we also have the task at hand, which is compliance with growth management #1. And so we can't forget that. And we have the B word, which is the budget. And so, yeah, we have some money, but we don't have an unlimited amount of money to do everything that we could want. So we just have to be selective in what our priorities are and then task the consultants with trying to get as much as we can out of this process. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
But, so we'll select your rep next meeting, which is on the 13th.
13th.
So we have time to do that. And then we'll go from
And
there.
it may help to just read through the RFP.
Yeah.
Submittal requirements and also the scoring metrics that we proposed ahead of the next meeting.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Good.
All right, let's move on to item number 7, overview of Planning Commission's 2022 accomplishments and 2023 work program.
Okay. I won't go over your work program again, I promise, because you guys have seen it. For accomplishments, for those that have been on the Planning Commission for a number of years, you've seen different iterations of this. We just updated it for the work that the Planning Commission did this past year. So we were missing our more recent commissioners' pictures, and so we will insert those. You have a joint meeting with City Council this Thursday evening. I will remind you, you guys can select one person to speak, a couple of people to kind of speak, whatever you want to do. I like it when as many planning commissioners can show up to the joint meeting and present your work program and your accomplishments to City Council. But I'll leave it to you guys to decide. And then as part of your accomplishments, it's on page 3 of the document. It just kind of goes through the work that was done the last year. So it breaks it down in the code amendments that were done, code enforcement provisions, the land use process and procedures, which was transitioning to the whole hearing examiner process, undergrounding utilities, and starting work on engineering standards. And then there were some comprehensive planning reviews that were done for the Parks and Rec open space planning in Vets Park, capital improvement plan updates, transportation improvement plan updates, and then we discussed a couple of times the comp plan process and our sub-area planning moving forward, and that's where we identified the 2 sub-areas that we really wanted to focus on, at least to try to get movement on those as much as possible in the comp plan update. And then we heard from Sound Transit, which is something that we need to do coming up here again. We usually get an update from Community Transit as well. And then we give you guys a development activities update just to let you know what's kind of going on that front of some of the stuff that you don't see and that we're working on every day. So that's what happened last year. I went through all of our agendas and tried to make sure I caught everything unless somebody remembers something that I missed, but I tried to catch everything that was done planning commission wise. So we'll add the pictures, make it look pretty, and kind of go from there, if that works for everybody.
Did you say that joint meeting was next Thursday? Is it not on March 6th?
Excuse me.
The joint meeting, is it on March 6th?
Joint meeting is on, when's it on? Am I getting it confused? Okay. I thought it was on the 2nd, but maybe I'm confused. Okay, March 6th, Monday.
Okay.
We've been a little frazzled around here at City Hall lately. I'm serious about that. It's been crazy. Okay, so I've tried to screw you up and then make you come to a meeting that you didn't need to come to. And then you could have been really mad at me. March 6th. So you guys want to talk about how you want to proceed with presenting? I don't like to present your stuff because I think it's your stuff and nobody needs to hear me talk any more than I already do. So,
Well, that's funny because I was just going to say normally you'll do the normal presentation and then they'll just kind of go down the line and the commissioners who want to speak or add stuff.
and I can do that. I'm happy to do that. But I'm also happy to let you guys present, what you have done and what your work program is too. So you tell me and I'll do whatever you guys would like to do.
I'm fine with you
Okay.
going over it and
Okay.
then everybody can then just add their own 2 cents.
Okay.
Like what they're looking forward to, in the coming year, or for those who are fairly new, what they're hoping to get out of it, or,
Okay.
Everybody's a little bit different. Some people say, oh, no, I have nothing. Thank you. I
All right.
pass.
Yeah.
And usually sometimes it's an engagement period with the city council as well. So sometimes they might be a little bit proactive and ask you directly a question or, something that you're looking forward to, or you might say something that piques their interest. So then there might be a follow-up, but it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. So, this can be, short and sweet, or, depending on any kind of questions we get back from them, might be long. I know in the past, I've, had a pretty long statement to make. I don't think I have one of those this year. So. Those are usually reactive because of something, so, nothing
Nothing sticks out this
Nothing
year,
sticks out
huh?
to cause me to do a 20-minute dialogue.
Oh, man, I'm missing out.
Like I've done in the past, but, no, don't get me wrong, I'm sure I could talk about some stuff, but, there's.
You can wait till next year.
I
I'm
can-
sure there'll be
yeah,
plenty. Yeah.
I'd be just as happy if this was a Zoom meeting, it's just, but yeah, it's just, it's the one time a year we usually engage with the city council, so.
Okay.
They'll tell us what they're excited to see and what they're, what they're happy to see that's on our work plan and that we're kind of on the same page. Because we're not always on the same page with the city council, so usually we want to see stuff in action and it gets deferred.
Oh,
But don't worry, they're polite. They usually just
Yeah.
thank us. They all just take their turn thanking us.
Yeah,
for-
thank you for all your hard work and we really appreciate it. And you got to remember, probably at least half of them were on the planning commission at some point. So,
Yeah.
So they
And we'll see,
they know the deal.
Now you'll see
Roy.
Rory, huh?
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
see if I.
Be like,
maybe,
hey,
yeah.
Rory, do us a solid. Yeah.
he should be on our side of the table.
Sorry, I have a correction. I messed up, and I took a wrong look at the calendar. Actually, you are right on the second, not
The second?
my original, and then it say six, but then after that, we switch it, and after the ELT meeting, we swap up the topic between those two days, so it becomes the final one in second, not the sixth.
Still trapped.
All right.
Okay, so it is Thursday. That's what I thought, but
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock. And we'll just be at the table, the same. So everybody would like
That's
to,
this week.
that is,
Yeah.
3 days.
I'm going to attend Thursday, and if I don't get to sit at the table, I'll attend Monday.
Okay. All right. So if there's not any questions on that, then I think we've covered for Thursday.
All righty, and then, so it looks like we'll go ahead and move on to item number 8, Director's Report.
All right. So just a few things to share. We've been internally working on getting grants together for funding for the Main Street Project Phase 2, the 56th portion of it from 236 up north. And one of those federal grants is due tomorrow, so that's why we're all a little bit stir crazy around here in part. So a lot of work in putting those together. And so that's moving forward, a lot of work there. City manager interviews are happening this week. There will be essentially an all-day session of various interviews and tours going on all day Friday with a community reception Friday evening, and then the finalist will also be interviewed on Saturday by council as well. So a lot of work going on by various folks, including Jennifer and Lan and others out of clerks and admin on putting all of that information together. And on a sad note, today, we found out that we had a death of one of our team members at City Hall. As some of you folks have met Mark Safarian, who was our traffic engineer. He passed away, and so been a fairly rough day for a number of us at City Hall, but I know that some of you have worked with Mark previously, and so just wanted to share that news before it kind of travels around the community and such. So anyway. anyways, with that, that is all I have to report that I'm aware of, unless somebody has any questions for me that you folks have today.
I was going to say real quick, just no questions, but I just recently had dialogue with Mark about how the reporting would be going for the census info in terms of the racial background for one of his reports. And, I felt there was an oversight and, had some dialogue, and we, came with a good workaround
Yeah.
on that. And that just feels like that was just a few weeks ago. So,
Yeah.
geez.
Yeah, and it was, it was unexpected. Mark had taken some time off last week for vacation time and was due back today and didn't make it in. And so then we found out about it this morning. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer day to say the least for a lot of folks here at City Hall. So.
Miguel, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just had a question. The grant applications, do you just do them in-house or do you use consultants for that?
Well, unfortunately, we do most of the work in-house. And so they used, I know engineering used a little bit of help on the RAISE grant, which is one of the federal grants. But a lot of the work you'll probably see lights on upstairs still by some of the engineering and public works staff right now. And that's just been a huge lift and kind of a late start on some of this stuff. So a lot of that work's been kind of all hands on deck, staff-wise, for the last little bit. So, yep.
Anybody else have any questions for Christie? Nope, not hearing or seeing any, so we'll go ahead and move on to item number 9, miscellaneous business by call of planning commissioners. Anybody have any miscellaneous business? Not hearing or seeing anything, so we'll go ahead and I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.